So it's Friday, and it's Good Friday, and then it's Good News Friday. It's all kinds of good and news and Friday. Larry Goldberg, always a pleasure to have you join me as co-host on Friday and Monday and sometimes in between.
And the good news today is Tesla didn't go down.
It didn't. It didn't. Yeah, it was incredible. It had
Well,
a,
it didn't go up either,
oh,
but
there you go. That's right.
it didn't get sold or bought because the market was closed.
Yes, exactly. So that takes a lot of my fun away. When I'm one of those people that looks forward to Monday morning. It's like that's when the fun starts. It's
Right.
my football and my baseball and my golf game and everything else is when the market opens. So Larry, you've been having a phenomenal week. In fact, a couple of phenomenal weeks. And one of those things that's been amazing has been your delivery, your receipt of a Cybertruck. I see now that Bradford Ferguson got his today, so it's starting to the world is filling up with folks who have Cybertrucks. But you mentioned in the green room that you have a couple of more thoughts, a couple of new things over the course of the week that have really hit you.
Well, a couple of things to remark on. Firstly, it continues to outperform my expectations. My wife said to me today, we went to pick up some of her paintings. One is 6 foot long.
Aha.
We couldn't fit it in our Model X. I went to pick it up in the Cybertruck, no problem at all.
Right,
In fact,
right.
it fits with 1 inch to spare because the bed is 6 foot long.
Yeah.
And she just said to me out of the blue, gosh, this is a smooth ride. But, that's the kind of comments I've been getting with every ride that I've shared. But firstly, the real good news is it looks like we can confirm that production has hit about 1,000 a week.
Yeah. Joe, did you get that from anybody besides Joe Tegmeyer? I know that he had mentioned it.
I have it on.
Okay.
I'm fairly confident of the number
Okay.
at this point. Now, whether they're going to have to take down production for a while, when the new machinery arrives and whether that impacts anything and there's another sort of startup period, that's also possible. But if we think about 1,000 a week in Q2,
Yeah.
we're talking about real money.
13,000 times 100,000. It's real money.
Yeah, so 1,000 a week, and if we double that in our second quarter, we're at 2,000 a week in the third quarter, and double that again, we're at 4,000 a week, which is full production speed.
Right.
Whether we can achieve that quarter after quarter after
Yeah.
quarter, I don't know. I don't know what the limiting factor is in the equipment that they've got, but there is a very good chance we can hit my number, which was 100,000 for the
Right.
year, which would be very significant indeed, and would set us up for an incredible 2025
Mhm.
from a Cybertruck perspective.
Right.
So I'm very, very happy about that. I think that we're getting a Cybertruck halo effect. I see it wherever I go. There's a lot of thumbs up. There's a lot of stares. There's a lot of phones hanging out of windows. A lot. So it looks, I think it's a very favorable launch. Very favorable launch. I can't remember a launch quite as smooth as this. I guess the Model Y was a very smooth launch, right? But this is like a complete rebuild. And not rebuild, a complete new build.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like nothing ever built before. But I have to say, this steer-by-wire is magical. Now, I said on a Spaces with Yaman earlier this week, I think it was yesterday actually, I said, look, I'm hoping that the next generation not only includes, as we know it will do, steer-by-wire,
Yes.
and includes the next iteration of the single wire Ethernet connection, because, they showed us at Investor Day that the Model Y is going to have like 85% Tesla built controllers,
Right.
and 85% on the single loop. They promised us 100% in the next gen, and I have no doubt they're going to achieve it, because I think they're that close.
Right.
But I'm thinking that also means steer-by-wire, and eliminating all of the, hydraulics.
Right.
So eliminate hydraulics, huge amount of weight, huge amount of complexity, a lot of cost, replace with steer-by-wire, 100% controllers on the fringe, in the network, in the single wire network. And I'm hoping, above hope, that they build it out of stainless steel.
Oh, interesting.
And why? Because I have never driven a car with a body this stiff. The body, I mean, I've driven many cars, and I think that the Ferrari had, of all the cars I've driven, the Ferrari had, the best, I think, body, I don't know what it is. It's like this body strength, this body stiffness, this body integration. This car is better, even though it's 5 times as large as the Ferrari I had.
Right, right.
So I think that if you take all into account, this, this Pioneer, this car is just an ideal pointer for the future. Now, it's possible that they're not going to put stainless on there, and they're going to go more conventional. But nonetheless, I think that everything I've seen so far on this car augurs so well for the coming future. So very happy about it. Very happy about it.
Yeah, and I've been watching some of these reviews by some of these top reviewers, and I've been surprised over and over and over again by their nitpickiness. And
gotta find something. They have to find something.
Yeah. And commonly not even mentioning the sound system at all. It's like,
that's amazing. That is amazing to me. And I saw one review yesterday. Who was it? I'm trying to remember who the latest review was. I don't know. Doug. What was his name? Doug DeMuro.
DeMuro, yes.
So he gets in the car and he floors it, and he said, "Man, we're used to
electric
EVs." And I said to myself, he did what I did.
Yeah.
The car gets delivered in the lowest setting.
Yeah.
They have chill, and then they have medium, and then they have, the fastest takeoff, and it comes in chill. And I saw he took off in chill. And he's an idiot, because yes, we're used to it. Yes, we've had plaid. But when you're in a truck that large and you put it on, the whatever the top level is, and you hit that, it is a kick in the pants. And I've been in all the plaids, and I've been in all, it's a kick in the pants.
And he talks about it like everybody's used to the electric. Well, only probably, I don't know, 3 or 4% of the population has ever been in an electric.
Right. And some of those cars have this long delay before they take off. In fact, somebody noted it the other day.
Yeah.
I forget who noted it. Somebody noted it on X. One of the Tesla guys came on and said, "Yeah, we know about that, and we've had to engineer around it. And this is the reason why people do it, because they delay the torque because it causes problems.
Right.
We had to do X, Y, and Z to overcome that problem." I forget who actually.
Yeah, he even mentioned that there is a slight delay in the Tesla but not as big as some of these others. But the delay is exactly what they needed. In other words, like you're saying, they engineered it. They knew what they were dealing with. And it, as usual with Tesla, they wanted to make it perfect for comfort, for
No, I'm gonna have to
Okay.
I'm gonna have to look at that reference. I don't believe there's a delay. I think that they engineer the delay within the technology so that within the mechanics so that you don't actually get a delay, but the shock to the system is somewhat buffered.
Something like that, Larry.
That's what I read. So I think that there's zero delay, but the shock is managed. You know what? I don't know what I'm talking about. So
now we're both admitting that we don't know. Oh
well,
no.
neither of us are engineers, and I'm quite happy to admit it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so that's the one thing he did, and the other thing he did, which was laughable, is that he put a T-shirt on the closure of the frunk.
Right.
And he pressed the close button and it closed, squash the T-shirt. Well, a T-shirt is like, several millimeters thick at the most, and it's compressible.
Yeah.
So I saw Dirty Tesla put his foot in there and hit the button.
Right.
And
nothing. Yeah.
No, the point is, Doug said they'll cut your arm off.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a very good thing to say.
Yeah.
Without any real proof. Dirty Tesla put his foot in there and it just bounced up, and other people have put, dummies in there and it bounces up. So, there are a lot of faults in these reviews.
Yes.
But there have been some excellent reviews.
Well, and the funny thing about DeMuro's review was he's giving all these negatives and when you're driving the car, it's just kind of so-so. There's no big deal about when you're driving it. It's not. And I'm thinking to myself, and then at the end he goes, exhilarating, exciting, next level. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you the same guy that was just?
Yeah, but I think we're very sensitive to, some of these things. I mean, I've driven not as many cars as Doug DeMuro, but I've driven a lot, and over many, 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 many more years than he's had sons rise, I've been driving cars.
Yeah.
You can't just slough off the experience of driving a car this large and this luxurious. So his comments at the end were correct.
Yeah. It
is all those things.
Right.
And but we're super sensitive to every every pick. So
but we'll see.
I'm convinced this is a winner. I'm convinced this is a million seller.
Yeah. So Larry, earlier today, I put out a video I was talking about on the subject of FSD, which is also something you've been opining about for the last week. That now that we've got FSD this good and great, we're going to have this rollout to everybody that wants to give it a try for 30 days. That's fantastic. The idea of allowing people to, or not even allowing, encouraging them to take a test drive when they first pick up their new vehicle with a customer service person that can help explain it. All of that's fantastic. Well, then it occurred to me, I went back to Cathie Wood's statement a couple of years ago where she says, why are we waiting on putting out the Robotaxi network? We need to have the Robotaxi network go out in a supervised manner. And that way, for people that bought their cars originally with the idea that they would send it out as Robotaxis, if they wanted to drive it for a few hours a week, they could drive it for a few hours a week and get that income that they thought they were going to get. For the folks who are for Tesla, who would like to have the data, what's happening for Tesla to get up ahead of the curve with regard to having the app made and starting to use the app and see where the flaws are in the app, etc. There'll be so many things that, because this rollout is not going to be uncomplicated. It's a complicated process to get from zero to having a network that has enough vehicles and not too many vehicles and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think? Should they start the app up now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value to doing that. I have always held, I'm with Pierre Ferragu. I've always held that Tesla shouldn't run the network itself. It should use Uber or partner with somebody else to do it. In every country, different partners. It's not Tesla style. They probably will do it themselves. So if they do it themselves, or if they do it through Uber, I think it would be great to advertise, a fully supervised drive yourself network. As you suggest, I think it's a great idea. I think there's value to it. The question is how to charge for it. I read one of the test drivers who's an Uber driver, or several actually have commented, have said that it's easier to drive this way. They drove longer, they drove for a longer day than they would have driven if they had been driving the car.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of value in a supervised driving network right now, particularly if Tesla intends to run the network itself.
Right.
If Tesla intends to run the network, now's the time to roll it out. It's a very competitive market out there. And you have to be very selective of the drivers you choose, because in a way you need a better driver than would normally just drive himself, herself. So it'll take a little bit of startup effort.
Yeah,
But
and
I
I
like
think
the idea. I like the idea.
Tesla can subsidize it in the early going. I even suggested in my video earlier today that they might subsidize it and to play around with pricing to find out.
Tesla never subsidized anything to play around with any pricing. We're talking about Elon Musk here. They don't subsidize. They make money or they don't do it, period. But why would they subsidize it?
Just to find out the impact. Ever since I started writing the book, the Elon Musk mission, and started looking at the Robotaxi network, and then listening to Cathie, listening to you, listening to other people talk about the Robotaxi network, the impact of the different pricing ideas where, competing with Uber right now, what impact does that have? Getting it down to $1 a mile, what impact does that have? Getting it down to 50 cents, what impact does that have? And so we're really going to be going into an unknown world. I've talked about if my trip to the beach, which is about 40 miles away, was only $20 each way, that's one thing. But if it's $40 each way, it's a completely different thing. So how do people make that decision, whether to use the Robotaxi, use their own vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to be a lot of difference between $2 a mile, $1 a mile, or 50 cents a mile. So there could be regional tests, regional analysis of what happens when you play with different price points.
My instinct is not to deeply discount the current Uber, Lyft guys. If you're going to bring in a third-party service, you may want to discount it a little bit, but you have a driver, and you're going to have to pay those drivers, and those drivers expect, at least as much as they earn now. If you want, and you want 5-star drivers. So it's going to be very expensive to supplement, to discount it. Very, very expensive. I mean, the numbers run up very quickly because the margins are relatively small. The costs are, relative to the margins are high. Now, unless you have, significant supplement in your charging, unless your charging costs are significantly low. I don't know enough about their charging costs to know, and I'd have to do the numbers. They could do it with all their used cars quite well. They wouldn't have to sell their used cars. And of course, their FSD costs them nothing. So it's possible, but I don't think they would want to lose money on it. I think they'd still want to make money on it. And so they'd have to do the numbers quite carefully as to make sure that, they can do it less expensively, but they can still show a good return on it.
Yeah, my theory was only that they might do regional tests. So you could take a city that's kind of, I used to test everything in Phoenix when I had my manufacturing business. So Phoenix was at that time was about 1 million population. It was remote from every other region, every other city. There was like nothing else around it for miles. So we could go and put a product in the Phoenix market. And if it failed or if it had a problem, it didn't affect Texas, it didn't affect California. It was far enough away. So you can run little tests like that. There's a bunch of really good cities in Utah that are around 100, 150,000 that are very remote. And you could play around with some of these pricing ideas, but it's just a thought because it's been a big question in my mind. And I know it's been in Cathie's and others as to what impact it's going to have on people's ways that they manage their lives based on these different price points.
I think it's so self-evident that I don't think it needs a lot of, there's no conflict. I mean, if you drop, the driver is the single largest cost, I think, I don't remember the numbers. I'm trying to remember
That's by far the
Cathie's numbers, and I don't remember it offhand, but I think the driver is the big number.
yeah.
And everything else is relatively marginal to that. The car is a big number, the driver is a big number. Now, in the ICE world, maintenance is a big number.
Yeah, but not
and I think that's why Teslas are so popular for drivers.
Right.
They love driving those Teslas. I just don't know enough. Really, I don't know enough about.
Yeah, so just to give you an example, as I think you remember, I just went through the process of eliminating one car in our household. I got rid of my ICE car, so we're down to one car. I don't drive very much. I don't go to very many places that I can't walk to. And we had one car to take us to those places. But it was still a decision, Larry. It was still a decision to not have that car. And it's still kind of, even though the decision's been made, it's still that thing that you're sitting there going, well, if I had a car right now, I could, do I call Uber or don't I? So there's a process, there's a social process too, in terms of the idea of it. It's an idea since you're 15 years old that a car is part of who you are. So I see a lot of sociological, psychological, all kinds of issues that are going to be going through people's minds as they contemplate giving up a car and totally relying. Now the 16-year-olds now, a lot of them are already socialized that way.
Yeah, they are.
They're like, oh, I'm not going to get a car till I'm in my 20s. It's just not worth it. The insurance is too much and it's too much hassle. So they're already kind of thinking that way. But for the rest of the crowd that have lived with a car their whole lives, it's a big deal.
So we were just discussing the Cybertruck production.
Yes, that's right.
As we speak, Tesla is celebrating the 6 millionth car.
Yeah.
And what do you think? It's being led by the Cybertruck stampede. A lot of Cybertrucks.
A lot of Cybertrucks. They're showing up everywhere. Everybody I know in Los Angeles has seen one at this point somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes multiples. Yeah. Well, I think it's being led by the Cybertruck. I really believe that this new decision to let people test the FSD, that this decision to allow for that is going to drive volume. I think people are going to try it at home. They're going to show their neighbor, they're going to show their friends, and that is going to drive more.
Do you believe volume of cars or volume of FSD sales, or both?
Oh, I think the FSD sales is the obvious one. That's going to happen for sure. I'm saying it's going to drive sales. I have not driven my grandkids or my daughter in West LA. I have not driven them in my car in 3.25 years since I first got it and took them on the first drive with FSD, and it was a failure.
Scare their pants off.
their pants on. But now with version 12.3, then I would be perfectly happy next time to take them out for a ride. And they'd be going, what? Are you kidding me? This thing is crazy. And all of a sudden, 4 grandkids, as they're getting into the car buying years, are going to be like, this is what I want when the time comes.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. So yeah, I think it's gonna actually increase sales. Oh, and people that have been thinking about it, and maybe even thinking about renting them out eventually on the Cybertruck the FSD network. Some of those people will say, okay, it's time to finally buy mine because we're almost there. So yeah, I think it'll increase sales.
Yeah, I think we're probably close to the nadir of the sales problems. I think that we're facing, I think China is in very rapid decline.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how China climbs out of where it's in right now.
I think they're going to kick the can down the road. It appears they're stimulating like crazy.
Sometimes the can just won't go down the road. It happened to Japan in 1980, in the 80s.
No.
I think it was 82 or 83, I forget which. I think it's happening. Japan kicked the can down the road. I mean, China's been kicking the can down the road since 2014. It's 2024. It's a decade. They may have another decade in them. They may have another year in them. They may not.
Yeah.
It's indications are they're not. I mean, they're still claiming that they're posting 5% growth.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's more than possible. But I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I think that it would be unwise for Tesla or anybody else to count on China for great increases in the future. And we noticed that there hasn't been any real conversation about another giga in China recently. The conversation.
Well, the battery factory is definitely opening.
Yes, but that's to put one battery factory. I don't see any reason that's not going to be successful.
Right. But I mean, the real question is how well the exports can run out of China,
Yes.
and whether there's growth there. But we're definitely seeing, I mean, what's her name? Lena Lopez or whatever, the lady in
in China, the
no,
spokesperson.
the woman from CNBC,
I don't know.
the one with the muddy, all I see is a muddy field.
Okay, yeah, I don't.
She wrote a piece in Today, long piece, a very in-depth piece, just all about, quote, Tesla's woes, unquote.
Oh, I see.
Celebrating the $4 billion that the shorts have made in the last year, and how the shorts are celebrating, and it's the most profitable short in the last year.
Sure.
And enumerating all these, mainly FUD points, but all these negative points about
Sure.
where Tesla is and how they're challenged and so on and so forth. So the question is, are we at the nadir of that? When do we climb back out? And this latest jump in the price from the bottom is related to the release of 12.3, or at least it was the release of 12.1. But
right,
as long as 12.3 and 4 and 5 follow in fairly rapid succession, we'll maintain that. But the real question is, for those who are short-term investors in Tesla, and there's a lot of them, they're the ones that make the noise. And the long-term investors, they're sitting on the sidelines for the most part, buying judiciously, buying, very cautiously. Cathie's buying
for fist.
hand over fist, yeah. Some others are, but for the most part, not really. And there's a lot of, analysts reducing their targets.
But if I know that I'm not telling you anything, Larry, but I'm talking to everybody out there. A really smart way to analyze any investment, whether it's your own personal business or whether you're buying a stock or a house or anything else, is what's the upside potential versus the downside risk. And right now, you could make a case that Tesla could go back and test 107 if there was market sentiment. I'm talking about the overall market started to drift down again, maybe took a 10% cut. It's really gotten out there. So maybe the market comes down 10%. And if Tesla was still showing bad numbers and there was no real evidence it was going to go back up, I could see it going back and testing 107. All right. So what's that downside potential? Is that 40%? Something like that, 40% downside potential. But the upside potential is just massive between the Cybertruck, the Robotaxi, the robot, the Optimus, energy, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to me that the bet right now would be an easy one to make.
So I think that the big thing to watch for the posting on Tuesday is whether they break out Cybertruck. I doubt they will.
I hope so.
I doubt they will. They may throw it into the same pot as the Y and the X, which means it'll be relatively easy to break out. And Troy will be able to give us to the decimal point because he's watching all those registrations. So it would be of value for them to separate it, but in my experience with Tesla, I mean, what they may do is just put everything into one lump instead of reporting separately, which would be terrible, but that's possible.
Terrible for us. They have to take into consideration that we're a different group of investors and that we like all these numbers and stuff. We like to get our hands in there.
They don't like to tell you though. So that's the one issue that we face on Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I would hope they break them out. I think there's value to breaking them out.
Have you picked a number for Tuesday, Larry?
I haven't really. I've played that game. Honestly, I find Troy's numbers are so accurate that I take his final number as given.
Okay.
So, I can play the game, but I would have to look at his numbers and do some sort of error assessment and error margin and key off that. So that's Tuesday morning. And then for the 20th, when financials are released and we have an investor call, I fear for the investor call. Whether Elon is on or not, he doesn't give the analysts what they want. They want very clear, concise estimates of what's coming. And Elon's very reluctant to give that. And
yeah, who knows? We know that Dan Ives the other day asked for a concise strategic analysis. I'm like thinking Elon gives it totally off this. Oh, well, here's what I kind of think's going to happen.
No, but you can, if you know Elon and if you understand what he's saying, you can see a precise strategic picture.
Well, there is a strategic plan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just that he's not going to lay it out with PowerPoint.
When he talks, he's thinking, you have the background of last year's investor call. You have the background of where the products are in terms of coming out, and you have the knowledge of what is going on in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to repaint the picture for you.
I happen to think that his earnings calls are the best earnings calls I've ever listened to. I've said this repeatedly because he's so transparent. He tells it exactly. He's not trying to gloss it up. He's not trying to make it worse than it is. He's going to give you what's on his heart. And sometimes the market's not interested in hearing that, but usually within a week or so after the earnings call, the market figures out what he was saying, and it usually works out, in a week or so. This last couple of times, no, because I even see in my numbers, for those of you who watch the show regularly, if I give even a slightly negative thumbnail, I don't get anything like the participation on that particular video as if I give a positive thumbnail. So when he gives a negative analysis at the earnings call, then the street writes it up that way and people are negative.
Yeah, it's possible. I personally like a less detailed but more crisp picture of the future. I mean, give us a sense of the number of sales they're expecting the year. Give us a sense the number of sales, how they see the coming 2 or 3 years, how they see margins playing in this field, and when they expect their new models, their new products to emerge. I mean, that's about the size of it now. On energy, turning to energy, I am very anxious to see this next quarter's margins, because if they begin to realize some of the reserves from previous sales, some of the, recognition of revenue from previous sales or previous installations, we will get some sort of picture of it. Unfortunately, I think we may have to wait the whole year out to see how the picture emerges in terms of, realizing some of those reserves or understanding. I have to say, I took the this issue of reserves, or this issue of recognition of revenue,
Right.
The two segments in the statement that the CPA that were in the notes to the financials, to two CPAs, and neither could interpret them.
Really? That's super interesting.
And I've had a lot of conversation with direct memos with quite a few, knowledgeable people, and everybody is coming up with, it could be this and it could be that, it could be the other, because there are two very significant amounts. There's $1 billion of work in the pipeline. Well, we understand work in the pipeline. That's very easy. You don't recognize that. That just gives you an idea of what's coming.
Right.
But $3 billion in revenue that can't be realized until for contraction. I don't understand that part of the wording, and I don't know how to count it. And I've taken a liberal view of it, which could be very, very, very good. But on the other hand, it could mean something else. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the quarter brings.
Yeah. So in the subscription business, if you have anything that you have a subscriber who is, for instance, a magazine subscription that sends you a magazine every month, and you pay it all in advance, you pay your $12 at the beginning of the year, and you only get to recognize it $1 a month.
But you know exactly
right,
how much revenue there is to be recognized, less, I don't know, people could cancel and get money back, or if they can't cancel and get money back, then you know exactly. That's not how this is worded.
No, but because some of these, and this is where I think, I don't know this for a fact, but some of the people that have analyzed it deeply, I mean, even like Bradford, Ferguson, and others who went into it deeply, it sounds to me like every contract is different. And this might be where it really gets complicated. So one contract might be, it's only a matter of turning it on, and that becomes a day when you get to recognize. And somebody else might be, you don't get to recognize until it hits a certain criteria in terms of the amount of energy that it's saving. Or
I'm certain of that. I'm certain that segment of the statement refers to performance against specification.
Right.
That's not the problem. The problem is, what is the rate of recognition? What is the potential for it all to be recognized? how do we measure what
Right.
is happening and what, because there's no history to it.
Right.
And, so it's really, really difficult. It's really, really difficult. And some people have contested that it even means those performance obligations. Some people say, no, it's not performance. So we don't know.
So on a similar note, I saw that Elon Musk yesterday, I haven't even mentioned this to Brian Wong yet. Elon Musk agreed with Brian Wong on something that I don't think anybody has really thought through, other than those two, maybe, saying that, the future is, of course, wind and solar, but he says mostly solar, that solar is by far the better way to extract energy. And Brian's been saying that for a long time, that there's a lot of negatives with wind, besides the fact that it might kill a few birds. There's a lot of other, and besides the recycling issue, which I think is beginning to be dealt with. But there's other issues with wind that don't make it necessarily the best way to go, and that solar is far better. So I wonder,
Well,
I wonder why Elon brought it up at this time. That's what I'm wondering.
well, if you just simply go to the master plan, you get it in detail. There's a certain amount of wind, not a hell of not, it's not the bulk of it, but there's a very large amount of solar. So it's very detailed in the plan. I don't think it's a secret as to what it is. The problem that I have is that the plan and everybody else is not recognizing the real problem. And by the way, it plays into this whole issue of recognition of revenue, and that is the interconnects and the grid. And I've got to write a piece about it, because the interconnection problems are terrible. It used to take up to 3 years to get an interconnect. Now it's going up to 5 years. A very high percentage, it may be 40%, or may even be more than 50%, of all the planned battery installations never occur because they can't wait for the interconnect.
Wow.
And they just dump the project. And so if the interconnect is the problem in realizing this income, then, we could be waiting for 2 years for some of this stuff to be realized.
Boy, Larry, let's see. Could you write that up in a question and put it up on the question list in such a way that people would get it? They would understand what you're asking?
Yeah, but it would get no votes,
No votes.
0 votes. And the reason it would get 0 votes is people don't see it as a problem.
And that's a super big issue, because we've got the transformer issue already. Then you add the interconnect issue.
The transformer question is wrapped up with the interconnect,
right,
and the grid.
Right. So you got all three of those issues. Maybe that's why we're not seeing plants being built as quickly for the new.
Honestly, the transformer issue is trivial compared to the problem of the interconnect. And the interconnect problem is tied up with the grid problem. Right now, the plan is to build the grid the way the grid has been built, and for new connections to string or for expansion to the grid to use new rights of way. Well, I don't know if you know how long it takes to get rights of way, but it's like forever. There is technology today to upgrade the existing grid with improved cabling.
Right.
Cabling that is upgraded using a lot of aluminium and higher grade steel. And it's a little technical, but the cost it's higher cost for the cabling, but the right-of-way cost and time goes away. So the cost of the rewiring of the grid actually is lower using the higher quality cable.
Right.
But it's like, you can't get there from here.
And Elon has always talked about distributed energy anyway. Having more energy where it's going to be generated.
You're not going to distribute energy without the improvements of the grid.
Yeah.
And without improvements to the grid, never mind the political problems, I'll talk about that in a minute, the interconnect problems would be greatly improved.
Right.
Now, the politics of the interconnect is that the interconnect is controlled by the guys who already produce energy.
Right. Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's functionally regulatory capture. You know, when I in a conference call, I mentioned this regulatory capture, and
You
so I said,
mentioned it at great length on my channel.
pardon?
You mentioned it at great length. We spent a great deal of time on this channel.
Yeah, yeah. And in this conference, somebody who is very highly respected in the investment community, while we're on the conference call, looks up the energy regulatory map, and he says, "Oh, Massachusetts been deregulated," and he starts listing all these states that have been deregulated. Well, they're deregulated in principle, but the interconnect is still run by the incumbents. The incumbent power producers, maybe they're no longer under control of the states,
Yes.
but they're still their own regulators from the interconnect point of view.
Right.
So it's corrupt.
So Larry, I think I'm not sure I got a clear answer. Do you think that the fact that Lathrop is not moving as fast as we thought it would, that Shanghai hasn't been built as soon as we thought it would, that we haven't had any new additional locations noted, because I know I was making projections months ago, I thought we'd be up to 4 or 5 plants by now. Do you think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's all these issues of being able to put them into service if we had them?
Well, there are two answers to that question. The one is, and I've said this frequently, I suppose I've said it on your channel. In the Tesla world, when Tesla make an announcement, people suddenly, assume it's already done. And in the Tesla world, when Tesla don't make an announcement, people assume that an announcement's going to come. So business doesn't move at that rate. Negotiating these deals are a very long process. I used to sell software to large financial institutions. The sales cycle was very short, only 6 months to 9 months. The contracting was another 1.5 years.
Wow.
So when you start talking about contracting to build a plant, to manufacture batteries that have never been used before in most locations, to supply electricity on a grid, which is used to 3 to 5 years. It used to be 3 years, now it's 5-year interconnect problems, and for which, about 2/3 of the proposed projects are canceled. Building a plant to manufacture components for that is a very long cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
China, they announced the plant mid of last year, or I think I forget, September, October last year. They're only building the plant now. The plant will only be ready by the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I imagine that, the interconnect problems and the
Transformer
problems would probably be less in China. Things move at, quote, China speed, unquote. But we won't see revenue from that plant until next year. And it'll be a very small amount of revenue compared to what we hope to get out of Lathrop this year.
So Jeff Lutz felt on Wednesday that we are now in spring. We've actually passed the spring equinox.
Yep.
We're now almost in April. That the investment community will now actually start looking to 2025. Is that your experience?
Yeah, 2025. They're definitely they've booked this year. Yeah.
Okay, so they're starting to say, okay, what's going to happen?
By the way, just a point on that,
Mhm.
just to show you how difficult it is to really value Tesla. At this point, every company has given every analyst a very clear very clear visibility of what is likely to happen or what they're planning to happen.
Mhm.
With some reservation, they always, underplay the number. Tesla didn't give that.
Right.
Just so you know and understand. Right.
Yeah. So, but if they are looking to 2025,
Mm-hmm.
I don't any intelligent analyst who at this point doesn't believe that robots of some kind, humanoid robots, are going to be beyond 2025 before we're starting to see them in use somehow. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
but that doesn't make any dollars available in terms.
So I suppose this is a Gary question, but you get involved in these startups. Doesn't an analyst, even in this situation, we see these companies that don't even have a factory. We saw all these what do you call it, EV factories, the Lucids and the Fiskers and everybody. We saw them getting these massive valuations before they had a plant, before they even had a working prototype. It would seem to me that if, again, somebody that's thinking clearly takes a look at the robot potential and says the potential for this is the greatest potential of any product in the history of humankind. Therefore, I need to look at it harder than I would, let's say, a new cereal company or even maybe a new pill. It's the biggest product ever in history. I really need to be spending some time thinking about this product. And then you see 24 companies or 25 companies, whatever it is right now, that have some kind of working product that can do some kind of useful tasks at some speed or another. And some of them now, even with language. I gotta believe that somebody I don't understand. I guess I'm having a hard time understanding how these individuals aren't saying, I need to find a way to at least start nibbling at this business to make sure that I'm not looking stupid at the end of 2025 if this is
Well,
now
yeah, to your point, several analysts have mentioned the robot
yes.
already. And some of them who value Elon's ability to execute have factored something in. I don't think anybody's placed a real value on it, but they factored something in. Cathie Wood has, I think, begun to factor it in. So you're thinking about 2025. I personally don't think we're going to see revenue in 2025. I would be shocked to see real revenue in 2025. That's worth calculating. But I don't think analysts are going to, as a group, apply a very high valuation to the bot unless sometime in this coming quarter, we see a lot more evidence of its capability. We're still a few months away from a real live test of a robot in a production environment, of a humanoid robot in a production environment. I think there are some trials going on at Amazon that haven't been made very obvious, but there are a lot of people in the game. People are skeptical of anything Tesla does, until proven wrong. So I don't think that it's a catalyst for this year.
Bradford Ferguson keeps going like this. He says, shh. We've got the Robotaxi, we've got the Optimus. Don't tell them.
That's my view. That's my perspective. I mean, for people who believe that, as I do, this is the ideal time to start accumulating.
Yeah.
And
Not
you know,
investment advice.
there's no doubt that the 21st or the 22nd of this month will be an ideal opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you gonna, by the way, you mentioned the 20th. I don't think that could be right.
Okay.
It's either be the 17th or the 24th.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm just picking a number
Yeah, yeah,
out,
yeah.
picking an estimate.
It's always on a Wednesday, so yeah. So
Um,
so the day after that talk will be the perfect day to buy, right?
That's generally been the case, After hours, Elon comes on, stock tanks. And if Elon's on form, we could see a real, we could see the stock go down quite considerably.
Well, for those of you who have stuck around long enough, Larry and I are going to talk about one last thing because we felt that this might be a little esoteric and a little bit, maybe not everybody be that interested or excited about it. But Larry did a long, did you put it up on X as a regular post, or did you put it
Yeah,
up? Okay.
that's a very good point.
So they can go back and look at it in detail if they want. But you talked about a major change that's going to impact every software company out there. Larry, you wanna kind of set it up, and I'll see if I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah, as an investor, as a venture capital investor, either as a limited partner in a venture capital fund or as an angel, I invest in companies, and I get an awful lot of people who are bringing me, software companies that are based upon software as a service and saying, look how good we're doing, and we're going to do great. And, I just put out a piece to say, guys, SaaS is dead. Software as a service is dead. Selling software as an application is dead. Selling the software the same way as you've been doing the last 10 years, 15 years, is not going to happen anymore. AI is real, and large language models or foundational models are real. And the people who are going to dominate the future are those people who understand that a large language model, a generalized large language model, has become, dime a dozen. They're like
Yeah.
5 or 6, and everybody touts the latest and greatest, and all it is training on ever larger amounts of data and being, tweaked, and a little bit of invention here, a little bit of invention. But in general, the large language model is generally the basis of it. The beauty about a large language model is that it actually has developed the capability of coding, and it's developed the capability of understanding documentation, understanding process documentation, understanding code documentation. So if you're building software and not simply driving an AI to create your functionality, you're not really doing much. And then the idea of selling software to multiple people to use the same piece of software is now somewhat crazy, because everybody has a different data vantage point. And so the people who are going to win in this new world are the people who can bring common groups together that have a common data set that could add to the large language model in a proprietary fashion. So if you're a software company that sells software that drives motor cars, you'll want a private data set of all these cars that drive. This should be familiar to most of our listeners.
Right.
Those are the people who are going to succeed. And so the question is your customer base all in a similar business? Do they all have a store of data that they've built over years? And can you use all that data in a way that can bring them into this next generation that can provide them with functionality that they don't have to lock in, in code and then go through this enormous cost of change and have all these services come into it. So that's a completely different business model to the one that is being run right now, where you have a group of coders and you have a service department, you come and you put the stuff on the cloud and people download it and they use it. Those days are over. So don't take your latest SaaS deal to a VC and expect them to get excited. So that's the message. I don't know that the message is that important to this group of listeners, but what is important to this group of listeners is that the world is about to change. As greater changes took place when the internet came about,
Yes,
probably an order of magnitude or 2 or 3 larger than that, and we're just at the beginning. We don't know how it's all going to play out, but it's going to be brutal, particularly on existing software companies.
Are there any names out there, Larry, right now, other than Tesla, who have the right approach or who are already positioned to take advantage of this ability to grab the important data and then bring that data into an operating system that is going to benefit a customer base?
So you think about the companies like SAP that really powered all of corporate, I was going to say corporate America, it's really corporate international corporations. And, their software is so clunky. It is so layered with, eons of code. The question is, can they reinvent themselves by, just going to the data of their clients and actually reimagining their software to function based upon the data that is already there?
Right.
I think it's going to be awfully difficult for them. So somebody who could go to, a group of SAP users and say, guys, we got a better solution, we got a better idea, could be very powerful, but SAP could do it to themselves. The question is, are they prepared to disrupt? That was the point of my paper, by the way. Are you prepared to disrupt yourself? Can you disrupt yourself? Do you understand enough how to go about disrupting yourself and changing your software from code to data?
What about somebody like a Palantir?
Palantir are functionally trying to do that. Palantir are actually in that vein. I think they understand it. And I don't know enough about the company to know whether they're doing it, but if anybody's capable, if anybody has the means to do it, it's a Palantir, it's an Oracle for that matter. Microsoft are proving to be very adept.
Yes.
I mean, incredibly adept. Google is a disaster. I mean, it's like, what happened to that company? When Elon Musk taught the world that you can't just keep stuffing more and more people into your organization and expect, them to improve their performance, and that you got to really, really cut. And, Meta learned very quickly. I mean, Meta just cut, 20,000 people. Google did cut some people, but when you see the disaster that's going on there, I think they have to cut, a very tiny proportion of Google makes all their money.
Yeah.
AdSense makes all their money. Search and AdSense, that's it. They could fire, 100,000 people, maybe 150,000 people, and they should fire everybody at the top. And then, so Google, in my view, is a
disrupt themselves.
It's the Walking Dead. So, I'm trying to evaluate, I had Google for years.
Yeah.
I had Google for years. It did very well. And people are still buying it and people are thinking it's a great company. It's not a great company. It's a functional disaster. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not sure our audience is that interested in this stuff.
Well, I thought it was an interesting, because I've been through all this, Larry, like you were, but you were in a much higher level because you were in the software business. But just as a manufacturer, I was going through these variations, these versions, and having to be on top of them or, lose out to the guys that were on top of them. And so I understand that today that would be a whole new set of learnings that would be necessary in a manufacturing business. It would be
Randy,
tons of data collection.
to put this into some perspective for you in your manufacturing environment, this is like the discovery of plastics.
There you go.
Seriously. The change that is happening now is like the discovery of plastics changed all of manufacturing and all of products.
Right.
For the worst, obviously. I mean, it was a terrible idea, but there you are. I don't know, what do I know? I don't know.
Larry, as always, it's great to have you on Good News Friday. I'm sure that we've imparted some good news over the last hour, certainly with regard to the future of Tesla. And of course, most of us, that's what's really, really high on our list of interest. Until now, Lissy, you're going to be traveling. You're like crazy on Monday.
I will do what I can to stick to the schedule. Monday, I'll be traveling all day, so I'm out.
We're going to be missing you on Monday, but maybe on Friday we'll see you again. And you'll be calling us from Amsterdam, or I don't know.
By Friday, I'll be in Paris.
You'll be in Paris on Friday. All right. Well, maybe you can get up there on the Eiffel Tower and, give us a little selfie and
Why not?
Have a lovely trip, and we'll talk to you maybe next Friday.
Great. Take care.
Thank you, Larry. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.